Burn them all, he said. Burn them in their homes, burn them in their beds. Tell me if your precious Renly commanded you to kill your own father and stand by while thousands of men, women, and children burned alive, would you have done it? Would you have kept your oath then?
For 2 whole seasons, Jaime Lannister was the guy we were supposed to hate. He was this arrogant, ruthless man who pushed a kid out a window, slept with his sister, and killed the king he'd sworn to protect. He was the definition of irredeemable. But then, this scene happened, and it changed everything.
There it is. That's the look. Seen it for 17 years, and face after face. You all despise me.
In many ways, the scene is an absolute masterpiece. And honestly, I would even say that it's better than the version in the book. Because in just a 3-minute of monologue, it doesn't just tear down the image of a monster, but it also gives us one of the most compelling character arcs ever put on screen. And it does all of that through this amazing storytelling and performance that you can't help but be drawn into. At this point, I guess you're probably thinking about how Jaime's story ended in the final season, and I get it. But trust me, no matter how the final season played out, it doesn't take away from the brilliance of this scene. If anything, it'll make you even more frustrated about what could have been.
Please don't.
So as always, I'll talk about all those things that make this scene a masterpiece in detail, but first, we need some context. This scene takes place right after Jaime loses his hand. It's one of the most vulnerable moments in his life. Because that hand wasn't just any hand, it was the one that made him the Kingslayer. It was the one that gave him both his fame and his shame. Now he's beaten, chained, and humiliated. He finds himself in a place he's never been before. For the first time in his life, he's stripped of everything he relied on and left with nothing but the truth of who he really is. So in such a breaking point, this steaming hot bath becomes almost a ritual for Jaime, a kind of purification. If you look closely, you'll see that it's not a coincidence the scene takes place in a bath. Because here, Jaime isn't just washing off the dirt from his body. He's trying to wash away the stain on his reputation. On one hand, there's Brienne. She stands in a soft light. Even though she's in the bath too, she somehow looks clean, almost glowing. On the other hand, there's Jaime. He is completely the opposite, covered in blood and dirt, vulnerable in every way. And the whole scene has this almost church-like feel to it, with their voices echoing off the walls and the quiet sound of water, as if we are about to witness a baptism.
You heard of wildfire? Of course. The Mad King was obsessed with it. He loved to watch people burn. He burned lords he didn't like. He burned hands who disobeyed him. He burned anyone who was against him. Before long, half the country was against him.
Right before Jaime starts telling the whole story, he looks at his injured wrist for a second, just like he does in the books. It's like the physical wound opens a door to something buried inside him. And that one look, that's what triggers the whole scene. Meanwhile, Brienne is us, the audience. At first, she doesn't really care, because when Jaime starts talking about the Mad King and his obsession with wildfire, it just sounds like the same old story. We've heard it before. That's why she doesn't look at him. She hears the words, but she's not really listening. Not until that line.
So he had his pyromancer place caches of wildfire all over the city.
In that moment, just like Brienne, we really start to listen. And that's when she stops being just another character in the scene and becomes our emotional guide. From then on, every time the camera cuts back to her, we are not just watching her reaction. We're watching our own, reflected right back at us. But as powerful as Brienne's reactions are, it's Jaime's face that really hits you. Because as he goes deeper into the story, we see this mix of emotions we've never seen from him before, especially when he gets to the part about what his father did during the rebellion. This is the first time we get a glimpse of Jaime's heart in conflict with itself.
Finally, the day of reckoning came. Robert Baratheon marched in the capital after his victory at the Trident. But my father arrived first. The whole Lannister army at his back, promising to defend the city against the rebels. I knew my father better than that. He's never been one to pick the losing side.
At first glance, it may seem like Jaime's giving almost a dry recap without emotion. But then you look at his face and see this deep, quiet pain. The moment he says Tywin was the first to arrive, there's this dark, almost haunted look in his eyes, And later, when he tells Brienne she knows him better than that, you can feel the pain, the shame, and even the disgust, all swirling together in this quiet storm inside him. You see, this is the first time we get to see that maybe he's not the man we have always thought he was. It turns out he has his own moral codes and actually knows what's right and wrong. But that sense of morality is tangled up in a loyalty so complicated that it almost tears him apart. Because as you see, he cannot bring himself to blame his father out loud. That's because doing so would be like blaming a part of himself, a part of his identity. So when you see it that way, lashing out at someone like Pycelle, a relatively safe scapegoat, feels not only human, but also completely in line with who he really is.
I urged him to surrender peacefully, but the king didn't listen to me. He didn't listen to Varys, who tried to warn him. But he did listen to Grand Maester Pycelle, that grey sunken cunt. You can trust the Lannisters, he said. We opened the gates and my father sacked the city.
Up to this point, the scene builds masterfully, revealing layers of Jaime's character we have never seen before. But it reaches its peak when he finally reveals what the Mad King was planning and what he ordered Jaime to do. And honestly, it's definitely one of the most iconic moments in the entire show.
Once again, I came to the king, begging him to surrender. He told me to bring him my father's head. Then he turned to his pyromancer. Burn them all, he said. Burn them in their homes, burn them in their beds. Tell me if your precious Renly commanded you to kill your own father and stand by while thousands of men, women, and children burned alive, would you have done it? Would you have kept your oath then?
I mean, what a line. That one question sums up Jaime's impossible dilemma so perfectly. And then there's Brienne's reaction. You can see the horror on her face, mixed with shame and this deep, growing empathy. Just like she does, this is where we truly start to understand Jaime. It's such a powerful turning point. But what really takes it to another level is going back to season 1 and re-watching that scene where Jaime talks about the Mad King's last words. Because even back then, you could see it in Jaime's eyes. There was something more to his story, something he wasn't saying.
What did the Mad King say when you stabbed him in the back? I never asked.
He said the same thing he'd been saying for hours. Burn them all.
With this context, that single tear running down Jaime's cheek as he remembers those words hits us even harder. Because in that moment, we finally get to see what they actually meant to him. And this is where Nikolai Coster-Waldau's performance becomes nothing short of a phenomenal. I mean, I've always thought he was a bit underrated, but here he shows us why he's one of the best actors on the show. This is the kind of performance that should be studied in acting classes.
First, I killed the pyromancer, and then when the king turned to flee, I drove my sword into his back. Burn them all, he kept saying. Burn them all.
Now, I've got to say though, knowing Jaime's backstory from the books makes this scene even more powerful and heartbreaking, because the trauma of killing the Mad King is deeply tied to who Jaime used to be. The show only hints at this, but in the books we find out that before joining the Kingsguard, he was an idealistic young man, someone who wanted to be like Arthur Dayne and Gerald Hightower. But all of his ideals got shattered the day he killed the Mad King. That's when the harsh reality hit him. The world wasn't just black and white, it was full of shades of gray, full of impossible choices. From then on, he became the Jaime we know, sarcastic and cynical, but deep down still hurting. And that's where the Kingslayer name came in. It became his shield, his way to protect himself from the judgment, from the pain of what he did. But the truth is, Jaime never fully became that man. That's exactly why in the books he's often haunted by the other Kingsguard and even Prince Rhaegar. They were the heroes once he admired, the ones he feels he let down. They show up in his nightmares, lingering like ghosts and reminding him that he's an oathbreaker, a man without honor. And as the scene goes on, we get to the ghost that probably haunts him the most. Ned Stark, the first man he faced him after killing the king.
That's where Ned Stark found me.
If this is true, why didn't you tell anyone? Why didn't you tell Lord Stark?
Stark, the Honorable Ned Stark, wanted to hear my side. He judged me guilty the moment he set eyes on me. By what right does the bull judge the lion?
What an amazing moment. This is where we truly understand that his feelings toward Ned Stark go way beyond simple resentment. There's actually something deeper here, something messy, conflicted, and way more human. Let me explain it this way. I just told you how Jaime is haunted by the ghosts of his past. Well, it's not a coincidence that the one haunts him the most is Ned Stark. Because with all his honor and principles, Ned isn't just a reminder of what Jaime could have been. He's a reflection of people like Arthur Dayne, those knights who live by the code Jaime once believed in. And the thing is, Jaime never actually saw Arthur Dayne or Rhaegar Targaryen judging him. They were both dead before he killed the Mad King. So all those cold, accusing looks in his nightmares weren't real. They were his own guilt staring back at him. But Ned's judgment was real. He was there. He saw Jaime on the throne, sword in hand, and he made up his mind just right there. At that moment, Ned's judgment went beyond just one man's opinion. It became the embodiment of all the ideals Jaime had abandoned. All the honorable men who would have looked at him and seen nothing but a disgrace. That's why his judgment cuts Jaime so deeply. But that judgment was as infuriating as it was painful, because deep down, Jaime truly believed that he did the right thing by breaking his oath and killing the king. And yet Ned, who himself broke a different kind of oath by fathering a bastard son but was still seen as honorable, seemed like a huge injustice to Jaime. Just remember the scene between Catelyn and Jaime in season 2.
Do you know, I've never been with any woman but Cersei. So in my own way, I have more honor than poor old dead Ned.
As you see, Jaime's clearly comparing himself to Ned Stark here, trying to measure his own sense of honor against Ned's. And in doing so, he's kind of exposing all these complicated feelings he has about him. But the thing is, he never actually says any of this out loud, because at the end of the day, he's a Lannister. He grew up with his father drilling this idea into him, that the Lannisters are lions, and lions don't care about what anyone else thinks. They're always above everyone else. But you see, Jaime never fully bought into that idea because deep down he does care, and this contradiction is what torments him. That's why when Brienne asks him why he never explained himself, the answer hits us hard, because it's heavy with everything he's been carrying inside. And that's where the deepest conflict in Jaime's heart lies. Because with that moment, we come to realize that Jaime is neither the reckless lion his father expects him to be, nor the infamous Kingslayer everyone believes him to be. He's actually a broken man, torn between these two identities, forced to kill his own ideals along with his king. As the scene ends, everything Jaime's been holding in for years hits him all at once. The heat of the bath, the weight of his past, it's too much, and he almost passes out. But maybe the most powerful moment of the scene comes right in the middle of all that vulnerability, when he says just one simple line while he's in Brienne's arms.
The Kingslayer!
Jaime. My name's Jaime.
In the books, Jaime never says his name out loud, but the show adds this amazing touch and turns it into a plea for identity. For 17 years, he's been called the Kingslayer. That name has followed him everywhere, almost like people forgot he even had a real name. But here, he's trying to take his name back. In that moment, he's not putting on the mask of the Kingslayer. He's not hiding behind the Lannister name. He's not clinging to the honor of the Kingsguard. All he wants more than anything is to be seen simply as himself. And for the first time in what feels like forever, the real Jaime finally steps into the light. So if you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, I'd really appreciate it if you leave a comment, give a like, and click to subscribe. Your support will greatly help the mysterious algorithm notice me. And if you want to support me directly, you can join the channel by clicking the join button. See you next time.